The concertmaster of the Pittsburgh Symphony and the Berlin Philharmonic, Noah Bendix-Balgley, is with us playing the Khachaturian Concerto this weekend at Heinz Hall. Noah, great to see you.
Good to see you.
The Khachaturian. It's not done very often. We don't hear it enough, and I can't wait to hear you play it.
It's a great piece. I really love this piece. It's just kind of infectious with its rhythms and melodies, and it's just really enjoyable to listen to and to play. And I've known the piece for a long time. Listened to it since I was a child. Actually, I grew up with this wonderful David Oistrakh recording of the concerto.
Aram Khachaturian was Armenian. Is there some Armenian folk music here?
Definitely. I mean, he drew heavily from that folk tradition, and there's a certain improvisatory sense, certain elements of the harmonies and the scales that are very Armenian. And my kind of personal connection with that is that I grew up. My father is a folk dancer and a folk dance teacher, so I grew up around a lot of Eastern European folk music, among which is Armenian music with its music of the duduk and all of that stuff. So I grew up around that, and he always had a particular fondness for this concerto because of that relationship with the folk music. So yeah, it's always been something I listened to, and I started playing it recently. I'm really looking forward to doing it here at the Pittsburgh Symphony.
Very authentic Armenian sound.
I'll try my best.
And is Khachaturian taking actual folk tunes from Armenia, or is his twist?
It's his own twist on stuff. But there's for example a particularly striking passage right before the cadenza in the first movement where the rest of the orchestra stops, and then the violin plays a little kind of fragment of a tune with this little run on it. And then the first clarinet imitates it, and then the violin does something else, another fancy run, and the clarinet imitates it. And it's very much, I imagine, a couple of Armenian shepherds on different mountaintops playing to each other. It's very evocative, and the second movement is just really, really beautiful and haunting. So it's really flavorful music, and it's a lot of fun to play.
Lots of fast playing in the
Lots
opening
of
movement
fast
and
playing.
the last movement.
Yeah, very rhythmic, especially in the last movement, just flies by. So a lot of virtuosic stuff for the violin, and also for some of the woodwind groups too. They get in on the action. So yeah, it's very exciting music in the end.
1940, 1941. David Oistrakh talked to Khachaturian about it. Apparently he suggested things for the cadenza.
Well, there are actually two cadenzas. Khachaturian wrote his own cadenza, which is very nice. I will actually be playing the Oistrakh cadenza, and often when a composer writes his own cadenza, one feels that to be authentic one should do that cadenza, but Oistrakh played his own cadenza sometimes with Khachaturian conducting, so it must have been authentic enough for that circumstance. And I just like the kind of the direction he goes with his cadenza.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to compare the two.
I mean, similar in tonal language. The Oistrakh one, for me, the end is very, very convincing. It kind of drives right into the orchestral entrance. So that's one of the reasons I like it.
Now, have you listened to Oistrakh's recording? We listened to a little bit on the radio and thought
Yeah.
it was terrific.
Yes, there are a couple of recordings of Oistrakh playing it. I know those well. Some other great recordings, too, with Kogan, who also knew Khachaturian and plays the concerto amazingly, and some more recent ones, Zach Perlman and such. So
Yours will top them all, I guarantee it. Now, have you done some of that folk dancing? Did you actually learn the steps from your dad?
When I was a kid, we would always go to these folk dance camps and workshops where he was teaching, and sometimes I'd learn some of the steps to the folk dances. Often I would be more concentrated on what the band was doing. There was often live music there, and so that's where I picked up the ear for this folk music, also for klezmer music, which is something else I play. And that was a very influential time for me because it was when I was just starting to play the violin classically, but I also had this other influence as well, this folk music influence. So it's just one of the reasons that I really feel a kinship with this concerto.